As second speaker of the negative team, it's my task to summarize the arguments put forward, acknowledging both the affirmative and the negative contributions, and to hopefully clarify and tie up any loose ends. First, I would like to acknowledge the definitions provided by Rachel as first affirmative speaker, as well as the 4 points taken from church teaching which underpin the affirmative position. There are some concerns here which we feel need to be clarified. Rachel, you stated at the beginning that practices referred to exclusively factory farming and the methods and the genetic engineering methods used for breeding, and that factory farming referred to extreme industrialization and commoditization, and that breeding referred to nuclear or mitochondrial altering of the animal via human technological interventions. You said that animals refers to non-human animals. You said that artificial meat, you raised artificial meat as meat which is drug-enhanced for size or for the speed of production. I've heard of another artificial meat, by the way, that which is grown from a few cells in a petri dish, therefore requiring no slaughtering, no breeding, and perhaps that's something for us to consider in this debate, which I will bring up again at the end. Lastly, you mentioned the environment as the localized ecosystem within which the farm itself is situated. Regarding the 4 points of church teaching, you said firstly, integrity of creation requires caring for all creation as gifts from God and received graciously. What exactly does this mean? Can we truly care for an animal if our ultimate intention is to slaughter and eat it? Secondly, you give an imperative to keep the environment and food safe for all. Again, what does this mean? If all includes all non-animal life, and we intend to eat it and kill it, it's not safe. Finally, you say our treatment of animals relates to our treatment of our fellow human beings. This seems unconvincing. Have you ever desired to pet your brother as you do a dog? Or feed your mum from a plastic bowl on the ground? Or do we bathe our children using a hose while they're leashed, to a pillar outside the house? Do you want to eat your grandpa? If none of these things are true, then the correlation seems weak between these. I'll explore a little more below. As Carly said, one of the fundamental questions in this debate is, how are we to strike a balance between, on the one hand, equating human and non-human animal life, and on the other hand, treating all non-human animals as is socially accepted? You said, since God entrusted animals to the stewardship of humanity, it is legitimate to use animals for food and clothing. Is it also legitimate to use Labradors for food and clothing? Is it legitimate to use Persian kittens who have soft flesh and soft fur for food and clothing? If not, why not, other than social norm? If we can exterminate a swamp of mosquitoes, why should we consider treating a dairy cow humanely, as if to suggest that one is equal to humans and the other isn't? This presents some real questions of consistency. And as Carly said earlier, neither are human, and therefore neither deserve to be treated humanely. Perhaps what is meant by linking factory farming to interhuman relations, the way we treat our fellow humans, is this. I've never had the desire to cram humans into an quote, intensely small space, intensely confined spaces and in mass numbers for my own benefit. There is some correlation between this, perhaps, between factory farming and the rat race of urban business. However, is this a moral correlation, or is it simply a societal correlation? Perhaps both are the sign of an ever more productive world, and not a sign of moral depravity. The affirmative speaker mentioned greed in the context of exploiting Mother Earth, exploiting the world, the Earth's resources. I wonder whether intention is important here. What if I were to slaughter 50 calves in a factory farming context to feed 100 starving homeless children? My intent is no longer greed, but compassion and generosity. Does that make the act morally excellent, morally neutral, morally repugnant? These questions remain. You mentioned waste. Is this fair considering the total use of the industry? For example, the cowhide used for leather, the excrement used for manure, the expelled methane gases used for very effective fuels. Also, given that by 2050, as the figures you gave, there'll be around 9 billion people on the planet, how would traditional farming ever cater for these numbers? How many families would have to devote themselves to the work of farming for the sake of their ever-expanding communities? The questions I've raised and re-raised here are relevant because they seek to remove the inconsistencies of the debate. Yes, the affirmative side did stipulate at the beginning, at the outset, that this was about factory farming and about breeding. However, throughout the debate, other things have emerged, such as treating animals humanely. This is a significant point, and frankly, it is a problem if it is the underlying concern. And the reason is this: what is immoral in factory farming can actually be found to be immoral in traditional farming as well. And if traditional farming is not found to be immoral, neither should factory farming on that grounds. This is an inconsistency if it does. If indeed any meat industry is at heart immoral, well, then it calls for society to adopt a vegan way of living. And this presents many concerns, which, for example, I won't expand on them now because there is not time, but they concern legitimate health concerns, especially for children, especially for those who do not have the appetite, who suffer from HIVs or AIDS, for those in regions that lack the sufficient plants and the means to get plants to them. Okay, so I can expand on that. I'll submit my notes, but those are some very serious concerns. What are we left with then? Should we try to separate what is sentient and what is non-sentient life? What is able to feel pain and what is merely what's called nociceptic? Or are we actually looking to minimize what appears to be necessary evil, farming of animals, breeding, etc.? If so, there are emerging solutions. One, which is an existing solution, is traditional farming, okay, but we've shown inconsistencies there. Another solution which is emerging, and is the responsibility of modern science, is growing meat as done in the petri dish. In decades to come, this may be a solution for society. However, at present, it seems that factory farming is both morally acceptable and socially necessary until a better solution presents itself.